Something happened inside the Cleveland Browns locker room that fans still can't believe. A rookie quarterback made history. The city celebrated. The league took notice. And then he got snubbed. No game ball, no public praise, nothing. And yet, one moment, caught on camera just seconds after the final whistle, told the real story. A general manager walked straight through the chaos. Reporters, players, staff, he passed them all and went straight to his guy. No rehearsed handshake, no forced smile. What happened next was raw emotion, too real to fake, too powerful to ignore. And that's when the football world realized something massive just shifted inside Cleveland. Because this wasn't just another rookie win. This was a long-shot quarterback silencing the entire league, and a GM having his "I told you so" moment without saying a word. But that made what happened next even more confusing, even more frustrating, because within minutes of this historic win, the same quarterback who just made NFL history didn't get the game ball. Why? Why did the Browns snub the one player who just broke a 30-year curse? And what does that moment between Andrew Berry and Shedeur Sanders really tell us about the politics, pressure, and power struggle going on inside the building? Because once you understand that, you'll realize this game wasn't just a win. It was a warning shot. It was easy to miss if you blinked. A quick hug, a few words, and a smile that looked way too effortless for the kind of pressure this man had been carrying for months. But for those who didn't miss it, for the fans, reporters, and NFL insiders who saw that moment for what it really was, it instantly became the most talked about clip in football. Right after the final whistle, as his team celebrated the end of one of the ugliest losing streaks in franchise history, GM Andrew Berry wasn't looking for the cameras. He wasn't making PR rounds or shaking hands on the sidelines. He walked straight toward his rookie quarterback, the fifth-rounder he stuck his neck out for, and with a face full of pride, leaned in and asked one simple question. How does it feel, bro? No script, no spotlight, just raw, real satisfaction between two people who knew exactly what that moment meant. And Shadur Sanders? He didn't gloat, he didn't overplay it. He delivered a calm, almost surgical answer. "We got a lot to improve on, man, but made some tackles today, saved more than I gave up." That line ripped through the noise like thunder, because in that single sentence you felt everything: humility, accountability, and just enough confidence to let everyone know he's not just happy to be here. He came to own this. It was the kind of exchange most fans never get to see, not because it's too private, but because it's too real. In a league full of pre-planned interviews, media-safe speeches, and one-game-at-a-time cliches, what happened between Andrew Berry and Shedeur Sanders felt different. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't filtered. This was two men quietly celebrating a war they'd been fighting behind closed doors for months, and they just won round one. Berry's face said it all. The smile was wide, but not forced. The eyes had relief in them, like a man who'd been doubted, questioned, maybe even laughed at, finally seeing the move he believed in unfold exactly the way he imagined it. Shedeur didn't just get the win, he validated Berry's vision. And for Berry, this wasn't just a football game, this was personal. Let's be honest, GMs live and die by quarterback decisions. You can draft an elite pass rusher, build the best offensive line, even install a top-tier coaching staff, but if you pick the wrong quarterback, it's over. Fans don't forget. Owners don't forgive. Careers end overnight over one bad QB call. So imagine the heat Andrew Berry was sitting in when he used a fifth-round pick, not on a flashy name from college football royalty, but on Shedeur Sanders, a player many critics dismissed as a media storyline, more famous for his father than his own game. They said he wasn't NFL ready. They said he'd struggle under pro pressure. They said he wasn't worth a roster spot, let alone one of Berry's few valuable draft picks. But right here, on this night, in this stadium, Berry was the one walking toward the quarterback like a man who knew he was right all along. And here's the thing nobody's talking about. NFL GMs don't usually go out of their way after games like that. Celebrations happen, cameras roll, but it's rare for a general manager to insert himself into that moment unless something really matters. When Berry made that walk to Shedeur, it wasn't about being seen. It was about letting his quarterback know, "I'm in your corner, I've always been in your corner." That's what fans picked up on. Not just the words, but the weight behind them. People watched the clip over and over, reposted it, quoted it, broke it down. Why? Because it felt like the start of something Cleveland hasn't had in a very long time: alignment. A front office that believes, a young quarterback who delivers, a real connection. Not stitched together by press releases and off-season hype, but earned on the field when everything was on the line. Compare that to most QB GM dynamics in today's NFL. Distant, sanitized, full of pressure, and zero personality. But this? This was a general manager who had gone out on a limb for a player publicly and privately and got to look him in the eye after 60 minutes of proof. He didn't say, "I told them." He didn't need to. The smile said it. The moment said it. The league heard it. And that's why it blew up online. Not because the Browns finally won. Not even because Shedeur looked like a seasoned starter. It went viral because it reminded people what sports should feel like. Trust, loyalty, and that rare, powerful thing when someone believes in you long before anyone else does, and you prove them right. Here's what made that viral post-game moment between Andrew Berry and Shadur Sanders hit so hard. It wasn't just heartwarming, it was defiance. Because what you didn't see in that clip were the months of pressure, the media backlash, the so-called draft experts questioning Berry's judgment, or the private conversations happening inside team meetings, where even members of the Browns organization weren't sold on the pick. Make no mistake, selecting Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round wasn't just a gamble, it was a declaration. This wasn't Andrew Berry playing it safe. This was a general manager stepping into a room full of differing agendas, scouting reports, and locker room politics, and raising his hand for a quarterback that half the league didn't even want to touch. And the pushback? It was immediate. The moment Shedeur's name got called, people started lining up with their criticisms. Too it all. Too much media attention. Too connected to Dion. Too risky for the pros. These weren't just social media takes, these were actual analysts, scouts, and insiders saying Shedeur didn't belong in the league. Some teams reportedly scrubbed him off their draft boards altogether. Not because of talent, but because of the noise that came with the Sanders name. The influence of his father, the brand, the spotlight. Everyone kept saying the same thing. He's not ready. He's not worth the distraction. But Berry saw something the others didn't, or maybe something they were too scared to admit. He knew Shedeur had the tools, quick decision-making, pocket presence, accuracy under pressure. But more importantly, he saw the mental toughness, the composure, the leadership. Those things don't show up on a stat sheet. Berry looked past the headlines and saw a quarterback who carried himself like a pro long before he had a pro contract. He wasn't betting on Dion's son, he was betting on his quarterback. And that belief didn't come without cost. Inside that building, there were voices who had other QBs circled. There's always politics when it comes to quarterback decisions. Coordinators want system fits. Scouts want traits. Owners want headlines. Berry had to navigate all of that and plant his flag. There are whispers that he went to bat for Shedeur in multiple war room meetings, that he overruled other voices, defended his decision over and over as the rounds passed, and when the moment came, he didn't flinch. Even in the 5th round, when other GMs were signing linebackers and backup corners, Berry pointed at the quarterback. And here's what makes that so wild. 5th-round QBs never get real chances in the NFL. They sit. They disappear into scout team depth charts. They bounce around practice squads and flame out within a year or two unless something unbelievable happens. The league doesn't treat 5th-rounders like future starters. That's what made Berry's move so rare and so risky. He didn't just draft Shedeur. He went against the grain. He went against the media, maybe even against voices in his own building. And now? That reckless pick is the only reason the Browns just broke a 30-year curse. That's why Berry's smile after the game wasn't just joy, it was relief. Because when you stand on an island, believing in a player nobody else wanted, and it works, that's not just football, that's personal. What Shedeur did on that field validated months of quiet resistance from Berry. When NFL insiders said the pick wouldn't matter, it mattered. When fans rolled their eyes at the 5th-round QB pick, he broke a franchise curse. When other talent evaluators wrote Shedeur off as a personality pick, he stood tall in the pocket and delivered like a veteran. Berry didn't just win a game that night, he won a war of perception. It was quiet, but it was loud. It didn't come on a podium or through a press release. It came through a handshake that said, "You proved me right," and a quarterback's response that said, "I'm just getting started." That's the part people outside the league might not see. This wasn't just a feel-good story. This was the kind of professional vindication GMs spend their careers chasing. Not many of them ever get it. Berry got it on a national stage with the whole league watching. And, ironically, the same moment that should have finally quieted the critics? it only made the situation louder. Because just when it looked like everything was coming together for Cleveland, the celebration took a strange turn, one so confusing, it sparked a storm of outrage behind the scenes and set off a debate that still hasn't cooled off. The game had been won. The rookie QB had delivered a performance for the history books. But the one thing that symbolizes respect in any NFL locker room? Shedeur never got it. It should have been simple. The Browns had just made history. A rookie quarterback walked in with 1 week of preparation and took down an opponent in a way fans hadn't seen, not in years, but in decades. The franchise snapped a 30-year curse in real time. The energy in the stadium was electric. The locker room was buzzing. And that's when the moment went sideways. After every NFL win, there's a tradition that carries more emotional weight than most people realize. The game ball. Coaches hand it out in the locker room to the player or players who made the biggest impact. It's more than just a dried-up piece of leather. It's a message. It says, "We saw what you did. We recognize you. You're the one who changed the game tonight." For 30 years, every rookie quarterback who wore a Cleveland Browns jersey tried and failed to win their first NFL start. Shedeur Sanders showed up and broke that streak on his very first try. He didn't just manage the game, he made plays. He moved the chains. He dropped passes into tight windows. He showed poise under pressure that even longtime veterans struggle to maintain. Over 200 passing yards. No meltdown moments, no panic, no collapse. And with all that, he didn't get the game ball. It almost doesn't sound real. But inside that locker room, while the team celebrated and the staff handed out their tokens of recognition, the coaching staff gave the ball to Myles Garrett instead. The elite defensive end who had a phenomenal night, no doubt about it. 3 sacks, total dominance. Myles did what Myles always does: level up the defense, wreck game plans, and give opposing quarterbacks nightmares. No one's disputing he played lights out, but that's not the point, because this game wasn't remembered for the pass rush. It didn't trend on Twitter because of a sack. It didn't dominate talk shows because the defense held their ground. This game went viral because a 5th-round rookie QB walked into a traditionally cursed franchise and delivered them hope in 60 minutes. It was his night. It was his moment. And yet, when it came time to stamp the history with the organization's seal of approval, they handed it to someone else. To fans watching closely, it wasn't just disappointing, it felt deliberate. Because how do you miss that kind of moment? How do you not recognize a rookie ending a nearly unbreakable losing streak attached to your franchise for 3 entire decades? Just think about what Shedeur overcame in 1 week. He wasn't taking first-team reps. He didn't have chemistry with the starting offense. He didn't get the preseason headlines. He wasn't even expected to play this soon. And what did he do? He stepped in, took ownership, and left no doubt that he was ready when called upon. And yet, when the team handed out respect, he was left out of it. To outsiders, the game ball might just seem like a symbolic gesture, something the media overhypes to stir controversy. But in the NFL, it's not just a gesture, it's a signal. It tells the locker room, this is who we're following tonight. It tells the young players on the roster, this is your example. It tells Shedeur Sanders himself, you just made history and we saw you do it. In par. But with that opportunity sitting right in front of them, the Browns coaching staff chose someone else. And worst of all, nobody had to say a single negative word for the message to come through loud and clear. The internet exploded. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of them lit up. The clip of Barry hugging Shedeur had already spread like wildfire. Fans felt part of the moment, part of the spark of something new. But when news broke that Shedeur didn't even get the game ball, everything flipped. People weren't just confused, they were mad. Some fans called it a slap in the face to the future. Others labeled it proof that Shedeur wasn't fully supported by the coaching staff. ESPN personalities weighed in. Former NFL players asked on live TV if there's something going on behind the scenes. Analysts questioned if this was really a snub or a strategy. And right there, buried under the chaos, a bigger conversation began swelling underneath the surface. What message was Cleveland trying to send? Because players look at things like this. Locker rooms watch who gets elevated publicly and who gets ignored. Even if it's unintentional, skipping over a history-making rookie, especially one who came with baggage, only people inside the building knew about feels like more than an accident. It feels like a statement. And whatever the intention behind it, the outcome is the same. It created possibly the most avoidable controversy in the Browns season. Shedeur delivered. The fans rallied. The team celebrated, and somehow, the moment passed without giving him what he earned. And just when it felt like that would be forgotten in all the post-game buzz, Shedeur himself dropped a quote that shifted everything, lifted the curtain, and revealed just how little preparation he had going into his debut. The conversation could have ended right there. Shadur Sanders had just made history. He didn't get the game ball, but he'd earned the respect of the fan base, lit up highlight reels across every social platform, and looked like a franchise quarterback straight out of the gate. But then, he dropped one sentence that flipped the entire narrative on its head. In his post-game interview after being snubbed, after walking into NFL chaos and leaving with the win, he calmly said, "1 week of practice? You know what I mean?" So imagine what a full offseason looks like. It get dangerous. And in 6 quiet words, he said more than most veterans say in an entire season. Because, let's be honest, that statement wasn't just casual confidence. It wasn't a throwaway line. That was a surgical mic drop, a direct shot at how he was handled. A not-so-subtle exposure of the fact that everything the world just watched, the poise, the touchdowns, the leadership, all happened with barely any real preparation. Think about what he's really saying. He didn't get first-team reps. He wasn't handed the keys. He wasn't getting game plans built around him. He didn't even have a rhythm with the starting receivers. And still, he came in, stepped up, and delivered something no other Browns rookie had done in 30 years. Let that sink in. 1 week. 1 week of practice. 1 week to learn timing, cadence, live bullets, pressure reads, every part of the playbook that seasoned quarterbacks take months to master. And then, he goes to war and wins. Not barely, clearly. The message wasn't even aggressive. He didn't need to raise his voice or drag anyone by name. That's what made it sting. He said it without saying it. "You should have been preparing me all along." And that one line cut deeper into the internal issues than any press conference rant ever could. It hit fans differently. It hit players differently. It even hit other quarterbacks around the league, guys who know how hard it is to prepare for a start in just 1 week without being part of the system's core. And in that moment, Cleveland had to face a brutal question. If Shadur Sanders could cook an NFL defense off 1 week's prep, what could he have done with 1 month? What about a full training camp as QB1? What about game plans tailored to his strengths? What if the playbook had been built around him, instead of held back like he was just a contingency option? Because the truth is, most rookies don't make major statements with their mouths, they're trained not to. Especially late-round picks. They're supposed to play the good soldier, nod in meetings, blend into the background. But Shedeur wasn't built for that. He's not your average rookie. He's been trained by one of the best to handle the spotlight, to speak with clarity, not emotion, to communicate respect while revealing truth. And what made his quote twice as powerful? The timing. Because it came right after one of the strangest moments in modern Browns history, the game ball snub, the celebration others were lifted up for. It came at a point when any young player would have been drowning in mixed emotions. And yet, this is how he responded. Not by lashing out, not with complaints, but with calm exposure. 1 week of practice. Imagine what a full offseason looks like. It get dangerous. That wasn't cockiness. That was vision. And what it did more than anything was turn the pressure right back toward the coaching staff. Because now, the spotlight isn't on Shedeur, it's on them. Why didn't he get reps in camp? Why wasn't he in the mix sooner? Did politics keep him benched too long? Did loyalty to the depth chart outweigh the spark that they had right in front of them the whole time? His quote forced Stefanski and every decision-maker on that sideline to rethink the past month of preparation. Because if he could operate like that with almost no meaningful practice time, what's the excuse for ignoring him until it was absolutely necessary? And now, fans want answers. Media wants clarity. Even players, ones who understand locker room dynamics and coach-player politics, are starting to say what everyone's thinking. You can't put him back on the sidelines now. You just can't. Because that quote won't go away. Even if they try to spin it, explain it, redirect the attention, that single line will chase them every single week that Shedeur isn't the starter. The internet has already claimed it. It get dangerous. It's the kind of line that becomes merch, captions, rally cries, and it's rooted in truth, not hype. That makes it deadly. Whether the Browns coaching staff realized it or not, Shedeur just seized control of the narrative. He did it respectfully. He did it professionally. But he put the entire front office and coaching staff on notice. You held me back. You still delivered. Now imagine what happens if you actually unleash me. Winning usually silences criticism. That's the whole idea. Win the game, and the noise gets quiet. But after Shedeur Sanders' historic debut, the noise didn't just stick around, it got louder, sharper, more direct. And at the center of it all, head coach Kevin Stefanski. Because now, fans are asking the question nobody inside the Browns organization ever wanted to deal with. Why wasn't Shedeur getting first-team reps in the first place? If he was capable of leading the team, breaking a 30-year rookie curse, and walking into the pocket with that level of composure after a single week, then what exactly was the coaching staff watching all through camp? That quote from Shedeur, 1 week. Imagine what a full offseason looks like. Wasn't just a media soundbite, it was a mirror. And when you hold it up to Stefanski's process, it reflects one uncomfortable truth. The Browns may have mismanaged their most important position. Because here's what we know. Shadur didn't spend summer taking snaps with the starters. He wasn't part of the "this year's plan" conversation. The Browns' quarterback depth chart was built around someone else. So now fans are asking, was that about performance or politics? Was Shedeur really seen as a developmental backup? Or, and this is the big one, was the coaching staff just too committed to a previous plan to see what was right in front of them? Because if everything he just did in his debut was possible with only 1 week, it makes the rest of the coaching decisions look like nothing short of a missed opportunity. And that's the scary part for Stefanski. This wasn't a loss. This was a win that made everyone question what he's doing. It's rare, but it's real. Sometimes a win doesn't save you, it exposes you. And right now, the question being asked across every studio panel, every fan forum, and every film room is becoming impossible to shrug off. Why wasn't this guy starting sooner? Because it's not just about Shedeur, it's about the system. Was Stefanski building game plans for the wrong quarterback? Was he sticking to a depth chart out of habit instead of adaptation? And now that Shedeur has proven he can play at this level, are they going to suddenly pivot or double down on what broke in the first place? This is where coaching failures usually get exposed not in how they handle losing, but in how they respond to unexpected winning. Shedeur showing up and flipping the franchise energy overnight wasn't in their script. It wasn't drawn up. It wasn't orchestrated. It was raw, real, and completely uncontainable. And that's the problem. Most coaching staffs love control. But now, Stefanski is dealing with a quarterback who just proved maybe he should have had more of it all along. Even worse, fans aren't buying the one game at a time deflection. This isn't a normal rookie story. This isn't a feel-good flash in the pan. This is a guy who came in late, proved he's ready, and accidentally exposed every decision made before this moment. And when the fans see it, they don't forget. Social posts are already turning. Local radio hosts are openly calling this a coaching miss. National analysts are asking ex-players to weigh in, and the reactions from those who've been in locker rooms, even they are calling it strange. There are veteran QBs who've gotten first-team reps all camp and still look shaky, but Shedeur, walking in cold, looked like he'd belonged for months. So the question is no longer just about who gets the start next game, it's about something bigger. Is Stefanski the guy to manage a franchise quarterback of this personality, power, and presence? Because let's not forget, Shadur isn't just a player. He's got elite genetics, major media eyes on him, and a father whose shadow could either lift this team or challenge it. And now, with Dion watching, even from the background, every choice gets magnified. Stefanski's next move is critical. If he tries to downplay this story, fans will see it as tone-deaf. If he shifts back to the previous QB when they're healthy, the backlash might be too loud to ignore. He's boxed in, and here's why. If Shedeur had started flat, there would be nothing to talk about. If he had crumbled under pressure, the entire conversation disappears. But he didn't. He walked into the fire and maybe rescued the franchise on just 1 week's notice. Now, the only thing pacing faster than the hype around Shedeur is the clock ticking on how the coaching staff responds. Because momentum like this doesn't come around often. And if Kevin Stefanski mishandles it again, it's not going to be just a game ball they take from him next time. It'll be the headset. What started as a locker room moment has now become something much bigger. Something deeper than just game balls, quarterback rating, or media spin. This is now a conversation about leadership, direction, vision. And inside the Cleveland Browns building, two names are standing on opposite sides of that conversation. Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. These are the men tasked with guiding the franchise. One owns the roster, one calls the plays. But after what happened with Shedeur Sanders, it's clear they're no longer walking in perfect sync if they ever were at all. Because what Shedeur's debut did was draw a line in permanent ink. On one side, you've got Barry, the general manager, who believed in potential others ignored. He found Shedeur when everyone else passed. He stood behind that choice when people mocked it. He stayed quiet and professional amid the noise, and when it finally played out on the field, he had that rare moment every GM secretly dreams about. The proof. Not through talk, not through press conferences, but through results. Barry didn't need to say, "I told you so," because the scoreboard did it for him. And then, there's Stefanski. A solid coach. Detail-driven. By the book. The kind of leader who can stabilize a ship but rarely takes big swings. Smart? Definitely. But safe. And now that safety-first mentality is landing him in dangerous territory. Because he didn't see this coming. He didn't plan for Shedeur to lead. He didn't plan for Shedeur to flip the locker room energy. He didn't plan for the fifth rounder to become the face of the team overnight. And maybe that's the root of the problem here. Barry builds for the future. Stefanski coaches for the system. And now the future just showed up ahead of schedule, but the system wasn't ready to receive it. You can see it in their tone. Go back and watch both men after the win. Barry? Emotion, relief, excitement. He looked like a man watching his plan spark to life. Stefanski? More measured, more muted. Like someone trying to keep the lid on something boiling underneath. And behind the scenes, whispers have already started. Is Barry stepping into the spotlight to push Stefanski to adapt? Is Stefanski quietly frustrated that his hand was forced into playing Shedeur? Is this the beginning of a philosophical split? Because here's the reality. Sometimes success exposes divide, not unity. And now, the national conversation is forcing that divide into the open. Barry looks like the visionary, the guy who trusted what others didn't. The executive who saw through the brand and into the player and found a future franchise QB hiding in plain sight. Stefanski? He's now carrying questions. Why wasn't Shedeur featured in camp? Why did it take so long to move him up the depth chart? Why was the offense clearly not tailored to his strengths early on? And why, when it came time to hand out respect, did he not get the game ball? Whether it's fair or not, perception becomes reality in this league, and right now, that reality is pointing to a GM with rising trust and a head coach trying to explain decisions that no longer make sense. Even NFL insiders are picking up on it. This is a classic front office versus sideline tension, one former scout posted. You can read it between the lines. And so here we are at a franchise crossroad. Barry might not be vocal, but he doesn't have to be anymore. His pick just made NFL history. His vision just gave fans hope they haven't truly felt in years. Shedeur didn't just win a game. He reopened the door to franchise stability at the most important position in all of football, the one position that has sent the Browns into tailspin after tailspin, year after year. Barry understands that. He seized that moment and stood next to it proudly. But can Stefanski handle what this moment now demands? Flexibility, urgency, letting go of structure, to protect something bigger. Because like it or not, Shedeur is no longer a prospect. He's a movement, one that fans are rallying behind, the front office is backing, and Stefanski didn't plan for. What comes next could define careers. If Stefanski adapts, if he lets go of what was and leans into what is, he might just rediscover his coaching spark and unlock something special. But if he resists, if he clings to the chart, if he pulls back on Shedeur's momentum to protect decisions of the past, this fan base will revolt. They've spent decades enduring quarterback chaos, false starts, heartbreaks, half-developed talent tossed aside too soon. They're not going to sit quietly if they see it happening all over again, not with the one quarterback who finally looks like the real thing. So this is the moment. Two men who both want what's best for this team, but only one of them seems ready to bet on change. And soon, the question won't just be about who starts under center. It'll be about who's actually running the future of the Cleveland Browns. For all the stats, game tape, and viral clips, one of the most powerful storylines happening inside the Cleveland Browns organization has nothing to do with X's and O's. It's about a father, a son, and the unbelievable pressure that comes from having a last name that already changed the sport once before. Because you can't talk about Shadur Sanders without talking about Dion. He's not just a Hall of Famer. He's not just a coach. And he's not just dad. Deion Sanders is a cultural figure, a living brand, a walking headline, a magnetic force that's followed Shedeur from the moment he first threw a football. And yet, what makes this even more impressive is how Shedeur never once ran from it. Most athletes with legendary parents try to create distance. No comparisons. No borrowed spotlight. No junior. But Shedeur, he leans in. Remember when he told Barry after the game? "Somebody called me junior." He smiled when he said it, but the message was layered. He knows what that label means. He knows the weight behind it. It's not just a nickname, it's decades of expectation, media attention, doubt disguised as compliments, and questions he's already had to answer 10,000 times before even setting foot in the league. And still, he carries it with grace. He embraces the shadow and walks right through it. For Shedeur, that legacy isn't a burden. It's proof that he was built for this. Built to lead. Built to handle pressure. Built to understand the stakes, the spotlight, and how incredibly easy it is for young quarterbacks to unravel under both. And you saw that emotional maturity on full display the moment he stepped off the field, because waiting for him right there, in the tunnel, was Deion. The two locked eyes, walked toward each other without words, and hugged in silence. For just a few seconds, time stood still. It wasn't an Instagram moment. It wasn't for the cameras. It was a father looking at his son who just went through everything they dreamed of, sacrificed for, been judged for, and came out standing tall. Security had to push people back to give them space. Trainers, players, coaches, they all gave that moment room. Because everyone in football knows what that was. That was a legacy win. That was a son, honoring the lessons of his father not in words, but on the field. And let's be clear, Deion never overshadowed him during this NFL rise. He told the media he wouldn't interfere, that once Shedeur made it to the league, it was his journey to write. And still his fingerprints are everywhere in the best way possible. You can see it in Shedeur's body language. The control, the calm, the command. Every time a camera finds him on the sideline, he's locked in like a guy playing chess, not trying to survive. He doesn't force plays. He doesn't blow up at bad calls. He talks like a vet, carries himself like a leader. That's not normal for a rookie. That's definitely not normal for a fifth-round rookie. That's something you only learn from someone who's been through it all and came out golden. That's the Deion effect. And Deion's not doing this with noise, hype, or media pressure. He's doing it like every great father does, showing up quietly when it matters most. When people doubted Shedeur's ability to shine outside of Colorado, he backed his son and then stepped back. When the Browns passed him up early in the draft, Deion said nothing. Let the silence speak. Let fate do what it does best. And now, watching Shedeur change the narrative for an entire franchise in just one game, you can feel the legacy shift already beginning. This isn't just Deion's son anymore. This is Shedeur building his own name, not away from Deion, but with him. Not because he has to, but because they always planned it this way. That private tunnel hug? That tearful celebration? That post-game quote? It was a chapter in a bigger story built over decades, but now taking shape in the face of one of the most ruthless, demanding leagues in the world. And this makes it even harder for the Browns to play politics now, because everyone watching knows this. Shedeur isn't alone. He has guidance, he has protection, he has experience in his corner that most rookies could only dream of. And Cleveland, after years of false hope and quarterback chaos, finally has a young leader who not only understands the game, he understands how to carry the weight of a city without cracking under it. This story isn't just about talent anymore. It's about generational wisdom. It's about legacy. And whether the coaching staff likes it or not, this family knows how to handle pressure. The only question now? Does the Browns organization have the emotional intelligence and humility to keep up with it? Because Shedeur is giving them the chance. He's staying poised. He isn't gloating. He's just moving forward. One clean throw, one quiet answer, one explosive quote at a time. But moments like this don't last forever. And if Cleveland squanders it, they aren't just wasting a draft pick. They'll be walking away from the quarterback they've been searching for their entire existence. So here we are. After one start, one historic win, and one legendary quote, Shadur Sanders may have changed everything about the Browns' quarterback situation. But now it's not about what's already happened. It's about what happens next. Because the pressure on Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Barry, and the Cleveland front office has now shifted from scouting and development to decision-making. And the entire league is watching to see whether they're going to get it right, or repeat every mistake they've been making for decades. You don't get moments like this often in professional football. A raw, unfiltered shift in momentum. A fan base rallying not around hype, not around PR campaigns, but around pure on-field performance. That's what Shedeur delivered. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't need time, media buildup, or custom plays designed around him. He showed up with a week to prepare and played like he had been leading the team since week 1. And that's what makes this moment so fragile and so dangerous. Because if Cleveland steps in the wrong direction now, they can't hide it. Everyone will see it. Every player in the locker room, every fan in the city, every analyst in sports media. This isn't just about who takes snaps in week 2. This is about a franchise deciding whether they're finally ready to stop searching and start building. The choices are simple. On paper, there are only 2 options for Cleveland. Option 1. Stick with Shedeur Sanders. Give him full first-team reps. Build the offense around his strengths. Lean into his momentum and commit to developing a leader who just proved he can carry the load. Option 2. Revert to the previous starter once they're healthy and treat Shedeur's breakout like a temporary fix, a one-week fluke instead of a long-term answer. But here's the thing. The second option isn't just unpopular, it's politically dangerous. Because fans don't just prefer Shedeur now, they've chosen him. And when a fan base that's been starved for quarterback success finally feels something real, something organic, and they watch you take it away, they don't forget. They don't forgive. And they definitely don't care about loyalty to the depth chart. The fallout if they choose wrong. Here's what could happen if Cleveland decides to bench Shedeur now. Stefanski gets eaten alive by the media. The same people who gave him rope for rebuilding will now question if he's capable of handling a QB transition, or worse, if he's too rigid to adapt when the situation evolves. Barry loses the high ground. His vision worked, but if the coaching staff devalues it, his power inside the building could erode fast. The locker room splits, quietly at first. But veteran defenders saw what Shedeur did. So did the O-linemen. So did the receivers. If they feel like respect isn't being given where it's due, trust breaks down. Phones check out, maybe not all at once. But the cycle begins. Familiar disappointment, broken chemistry, that gut feeling that ownership still doesn't get it. And worst of all, you may lose the one opportunity you've had in 30 years to take control of your own future. The case for sticking with Shedeur. Let's get brutally honest. You don't get lucky with a franchise quarterback very often. They don't fall into your lap at the exact moment the city needs hope. They don't enter the huddle with 1 week of practice and suddenly play like seasoned professionals. They don't handle locker room shade and media politics with poise and still come out calling the plays like nothing touched them. Shadur is different. The Browns may not have drafted him to be the guy, but he's acting like the guy. He's produced. He's been humble. He's created a gravitational pull that football teams dream of. This wasn't some lucky streak. All the traits that make a cornerstone quarterback? The Browns just saw them. In 60 minutes. Pocket presence, situational awareness, control under pressure, leadership without arrogance, maturity with confidence. And when you hear that quote, 1 week of practice, imagine what a full offseason looks like. You can't just ignore that. You can't. Because deep down, you know he's right. So ask yourself, if he can do this in week 1 with no prep, how far could he go with the entire team behind him, a healthy offseason, first-team reps, and a system built around him? That's the scary part. Not because it's a risk, but because it might be too real to ignore. And if the Browns do ignore it, if they send him back to the bench quietly, as if this didn't change everything, they won't just lose a season. They might lose their future. So what now? That's the question hanging over every hallway inside the Browns facility. What happens now? Does Kevin Stefanski rewrite his plan and ride the player that just altered the franchise trajectory? Does Andrew Barry go from vindicated to margin walker if Stefanski resists the shift? Will team owners step in? Or will they sit back and watch another season unravel right after showing so much promise? Shadur's story isn't finished, not even close. But how Cleveland handles him right now will shape what comes next. Because he didn't just win them a game, he gave them a choice. And what they choose could either wake up the sleeping giant inside this team or send them spiraling back into the same old darkness they've been crawling out of for 3 decades. Every fan base dreams of a moment like this. A moment that changes the narrative. changes the atmosphere, maybe even changes the future. And for the Cleveland Browns, that moment didn't come from a massive free agent deal, or a blockbuster trade, or a coaching overhaul. It came from a quiet fifth-round pick that most teams overlooked, a kid with a famous last name, a quarterback with baggage, they said, media noise, a brand, risk. A kid who had everything to prove and almost no support to do it with. And still, he proved it anyway. Shadur Sanders walked into the NFL with 1 week of practice, no first-team reps, a franchise on his back, and the weight of his father's legendary name wrapped around his shoulders, and won. Not just the game, but the moment. He delivered for the team. Spoke with maturity, handled a locker room slight with class, and gave the entire league a cold, hard truth. Imagine what I look like with a full offseason. That's not a soundbite. That's a warning. And that's why this moment between Andrew Berry and Shedeur Sanders, that split-second clip of real connection, real belief, and shared vindication, hit harder than anything else that week. Because it screamed everything that fans have been praying to hear for decades, we found our guy. You felt it in Berry's voice. You saw it on Shadur's face. And you knew whether you're a Browns fan or not, you were witnessing something NFL history has rarely served up. An underdog who earned it all and still acted like he hadn't earned anything yet. And somehow, that moment got tainted, not by failure, but by a blind spot. A symbol. The game ball. The one thing that could have made the memory shine just a little brighter? The one opportunity for the franchise to stand beside its rookie and say, "This is our future." And they missed it. Maybe it was unintentional, maybe it was traditional, or maybe it was calculated. But no matter what happened, it left a gap. A moment that should have been complete but wasn't. Now, Shedeur doesn't just have the fans behind him. He has a movement. He has the respect of veterans, the eye of every analyst, the full-throttle belief of a general manager who staked his reputation on him. And the only question left is, what does the Browns coaching staff choose to do next? Because this kind of opportunity doesn't come around again. Not like this. Not this raw. Not this real. There's no do-over. No second chance to bottle lightning once it's escaped. And if this franchise has truly changed, if they've truly grown from 3 decades of misfires, close calls, and quarterback heartbreak, then this is where they prove it. Not in a presser. Not in a tweet. But in the next game. In who takes the field. In whose shoulder the city rallies behind moving forward. Because this isn't just about a win. This could be the beginning of a new era. It could be the start of the same old story. A quarterback caught between potential and politics. Another misread. Another misstep. Another what if for a franchise that's already buried in them. So what do you think? Did Cleveland drop the ball literally and figuratively? Should Shedeur Sanders be the permanent starter right now, while the momentum is real? Or do you think this staff still sees him as a backup no matter what the scoreboard said? And how big was that quote? Did "it get dangerous" tell us everything we need to know? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this story isn't finished, and every reaction, every voice, every fan judgment matters right now. If you've been riding with this story, you already know. This isn't just a game, it's a generational moment in the making. And if the Browns play this right, it might be the moment everything finally changes. If you made it this far, you already care about the future of Shadur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns. So don't miss what comes next. Like, comment, and subscribe right now so you stay locked in on every twist, every surprise, and every play that could rewrite Browns history once and for all.